Hey friends, welcome back. Bentley is here with me and he's currently playing on the bed. So, say hi. Today's story takes place in the Bahamas. It's about love and finding something you thought you'd lost. Let's get started. The sunrise was gold and silver, streaked with bands of dark crimson. I breathed in the sea air, relishing the scent of salt water, the cry of gulls overhead, the feel of cool sand beneath my feet, and the taste of the salt spray on my lips. This is the real Paradise Island. The Atlantis Hotel stood to the south behind us, the ocean north of us, with the sun rising off to the east. The Bahamas isn't an island, my best friend, Tyler Morgan, said. His voice was hushed, as though we were standing in a cathedral instead of on a beach. It's a country, more than 700 islands, capital's Nassau. I smacked him lightly on the shoulder. You sound like a tour brochure. Andre, he said, you wouldn't believe how many I read getting ready for this weekend. I glanced at him. His grin looked forced around the edges. Groom getting nervous? I asked. He barked out a laugh. Me? No. You're quoting geography facts at sunrise. Maybe I just like geography, he said. You failed geography. His smile widened, but dark circles hung under his tired eyes. Okay, he admitted, holding up a thumb nearly touching his forefinger, the universal gesture for small. Maybe a little. A little? He gazed out over the water. The sun was climbing now, turning the sea into molten gold. In the distance, a pod of dolphins leaped out of the water. Look, he pointed offshore. The pod broke the surface, their gray backs shining in the morning sun. Good omen? I asked. I don't know. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me, he said quietly. Feels like a lot to trust one day with. Good thing it's not just one day, I said, grabbing his arm and leading him back to the Atlantis. Tyler, let's get some food. You're going to need it. We found a seat at Poseidon's table, one of the restaurants at the Atlantis Hotel, and drank fresh squeezed orange juice. A wide, open space with pale hardwood floors and turquoise seats. Tourists flocked to every seat. It smelled of fresh grilled fish and frying eggs. Fresh tortillas were made daily, if not hourly. Reggae played through hidden speakers, and a nearby table was filled with a family of 5, all shouting at each other. The hostess led us to a seat with a view of the ocean and placed water in front of us. Tyler and I spoke about baseball stats, anything to keep his mind off 1 o'clock. 5 hours to go. What would you like to order? The waiter asked. My heart hiccuped. Grooms were supposed to be nervous before weddings. Not best man. Not until I saw him. Dark eyes, dreadlocks pulled back from a handsome face, a smile warm enough to make me forget my own name. The question hung between us. What had he asked? Right, food. He'd asked about food. I wiped my hands on my shorts and forced my breathing to steady. I stared too long before answering. I'll have the egg, cheese, and chorizo tapas with mango salsa. The waiter spent a moment looking at me, wrote down my order, then met my eyes. I might be wrong, but he had the faintest of faint smiles, almost like he wanted to smile, but had to remain professional. That made me smile. Tyler snickered at me. Hello, done ordering? Did I stutter? Had anyone noticed? Seriously, you should get the fish, Tyler replied. Is it fresh? The waiter nodded. Caught last night and never frozen. I want to keep it simple, I finally replied. Remember, somebody is getting married in 5 hours. Don't remind me, Tyler simply said. Grilled mahi-mahi, please. And coffee. Make it black. The waiter turned back to me. Would you like coffee too? Yes, please. His name tag read Daniel. Cream and sugar? He asked. Cream. His eyes met mine again. Only for a second. Daniel flashed me a half smile. A thrill shot up my spine. Thank you, I said. He walked away. Black shorts, crisp white button-down, light hair on his legs. The hint of his cologne hung briefly in the air. Something sharp. A Hugo Boss, maybe. I breathed it in, my mind wondering what Daniel would smell like close up. What would it be like to kiss him? Am I crazy or desperate? A 3-second conversation and I'm fantasizing about him? Tyler had started talking, yet I hadn't heard a word he said. Chapter 3. Daniel returned 10 minutes later with our orders. My eyes never left him, noting the strength in his hands, the dimple on his cheek, the piece of a tattoo visible under his left sleeve. As he set the steaming plate in front of me, I quickly asked, "What's the tattoo?" Daniel glanced down at his arm, then finished arranging the plates. This? He pushed up the sleeve, revealing an odd black symbol that resembled a mechanical human face. What is it? I asked. The Autobot insignia. Transformers? I love the movies, he said. Seen every show back to the 1980s, and I've been collecting the figures since I was a kid. How many? About 1,000, he said, a note of pride in his voice. Once again, I watched as he retreated. Tyler kicked me under the table. Hello, Earth to Andre. We have a wedding later. You know, mine. I turned to my friend and seriously asked, Mind if I skip? My eyes still lingered on Daniel. You're the best man. Just messing with you, bro, I said, though I wondered if Daniel would be working tomorrow or later. He came back after a few minutes with a black folder for our cards. Let me handle it, Tyler said, pulling out his card. We'll charge it to the wedding. As he looked over the bill, he momentarily smiled before he became serious. I think there's an extra number. Tyler frowned with all the gravity of a man announcing the end of civilization. I took the bill. At the bottom, beneath the total, someone had written, Call me. And then a phone number followed by 3 hearts. Underneath, in very neat handwriting, Daniel. My pulse hammered. Had I imagined the whole thing? Tyler looked from the note to me. Then he looked back at the note. You've known this guy for what, 15 minutes? Shut up, I said. 15 minutes, he said, saluting me with coffee. Shall I leave a tip, or what happens in the Bahamas stays in the Bahamas? I rolled my eyes. Shut up, or I'll lock you in the bathroom before the ceremony. Tyler grinned. You wouldn't. Try me. You're the best man. I gave him the wickedest smirk I could. That's why I'll get away with it. Chapter 4. 11:55. An hour before the ceremony, we were in the groom suite changing. Silver gray tuxedos, navy blue bow ties and cummerbunds, white rose boutonnieres. 4 groomsmen, Tyler's 2 fathers, 1 terrified groom, and me, the best man, all crowded into a large dressing room with a bathroom. High-end cologne filled the air. A spray of 36 white roses were on the table. Piles of discarded street clothes lay about. It was nothing but an expensive frat house. Tyler stood in front of the mirror and for the 10th time attempted to tie the bow tie. "Should have checked a YouTube tutorial," I quipped, turning him to face me. "Let me." His face pale, his hands trembling, he finally said, "I've never been so nervous." In an attempt to distract him, I said, "Do you think I should call?" For a moment, Tyler's eyes widened. Then he grinned. "You old dog, are you asking my permission to go on a date? Today? I'm getting married in an hour." I swirled my coffee, looked at the ocean out the window, and said, "He had nice eyes." "Is that all you looked at?" "He had strong hands," I replied, performing innocence. "But they're delicate. Maybe Daniel's an artist?" "Oh my God, the day's booked," Tyler said. "Wedding, photos, celebratory dinner with toasts, receptions, wedding night. We can't fit anything in." "Good thing I'm not dating you." Tyler smirked. "Good thing you're not my type." One of his dads approached. Caterers texted. "What about?" Tyler asked, his voice rising into panic. "Cake's delayed," his dad said. "Some kind of slowdown on the Paradise Island Bridge." Tyler stiffened. I didn't think a person could go paler, but he did. "They promised they'd be here on time." "Hold still," I ordered, undoing the mess around his neck. "Stephanie's going to freak," my best friend said. His dad looked at his son, then hugged him. "Relax. Dad and I will look into it. Andre?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Make sure Tyler gets into the hall, preferably with both shoes on," Tyler's dad teased. I chuckled as I finished tying the knot. Sure enough, Tyler hadn't finished dressing himself. One shoe was on, the other forgotten on the bed. As Tyler's dads left the suite, one of the groomsmen tossed me the shoe. I whipped out my phone. Tyler was too nervous even to remember his own name. Time to play hardball. Standing next to Tyler, I handed him the shoe and then dialed Daniel's number. "You're doing it?" Tyler nearly yelled, but the disbelieving grin broke through his nerves. "You're calling Daniel, arranging a date on my wedding day?" At least he was distracted. The phone rang. I angled it so Tyler could hear. It rang again, and a third time. "Hello?" "Hey, Daniel," I said, smiling and eager with excitement. Tyler sat on the bed and slid his shoe on. I quickly whispered, "Tie the laces." He flipped me off and then tied his left shoe. Then I heard a breath on my phone. "Andre? You remembered me." I pointed to Tyler's right shoe and he tied it. Daniel's laugh warmed the line. "You kidding? I've been hoping you'd call." With a wicked smile aimed at Tyler. I'm getting pretty good at wicked smiles these days. I continued talking to Daniel. "Do you want to be my +1 at the reception?" I asked. And through the speakerphone, Daniel very blatantly said, "Yes, I do. I'll meet you there." Tyler groaned. Chapter 5. A man stepped into the suite without knocking. Tall, dark-haired, expensive watch, a black custom tuxedo, the sort of confidence money bought and good looks reinforced. No wedding ring, but he did sport a rainbow pin on his lapel, next to the red rose boutonniere. "There you are," he said, pointing at Tyler. "Stephanie sent me to make sure you haven't run." Tyler laughed. "Andre, this is Dominic Gold, Stephanie's cousin." Dominic offered a hand. A class ring with the Yale emblem sparkled under the lights. "Pleasure," he said, checking me out from top to bottom. He nodded as if he liked what he saw. Stephanie said you're a travel photographer? That you've worked with National Geographic? I disliked talking about myself. Or maybe it was the way Dominic asked. Either way, I let out a slow sigh. Most people, once they knew how many countries I'd been to, thought I was bragging, or worse, making it up. Best to smile and nod. A few times, I said. Dominic raised an eyebrow. Just a few? You wouldn't believe how many frequent flyer miles I have, I said. Are you taking pictures at the wedding? Dominic asked. And be Tyler's best man? I replied. I can't do both. Dominic turned to Tyler. Congratulations on surviving groom duty. Tyler chortled, suddenly looking like a soldier about to enter battle. It's not over yet. Dominic smiled. Give it an hour. Tyler grabbed his jacket and slid it on. If I survive that long. Chapter 6. I stood beside Tyler as we stood on the dais, under the floral arch. The officiant smiled, waiting 6 feet behind us. Tyler stared as Stephanie walked slowly down the aisle, dressed in billowing white, her father at her side. Instead of the traditional wedding march, a light cover of Pachelbel in D played in the background. Tyler's little niece flung white and red rose petals across the teal carpet. They met under the arch, took each other's hands, and the officiant stepped forward. The music faded until only the whoosh of the air conditioner sounded, its gentle breeze causing the flowers to sway. The officiant nodded, a smile breaking across her face. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to preside over the wedding of Tyler Peter Morgan to Stephanie Lisa Gold. Tyler and Stephanie have written vows. Tyler began, his voice shaking. Stephanie, that first night I saw you, I knew there was something special, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life beside you. The depth in my heart has changed my life. I choose you to be my wife. The crowd stared at the couple, several people dabbing at their eyes. The flower girl squirmed on her mother's lap. I chose a different path. Always traveling, always searching for a story, never satisfied with standing in one place too long. Had I ever stayed with another person longer than a few months? Why bother? Life was a series of rotating hotel rooms and airport concourses. I'd spend a few months in town, then fly off to Paris, or Germany, or even Las Vegas. Sometimes I got to choose, but most of the time it depended on my editor or the assignment if I was going freelance. Relationships required commitment. They required someone willing to stay in one place, grow roots, build something permanent. My parents had never had that kind of life. Dad was Army. We'd always traveled until my folks got divorced. Mom lived in Oregon, Dad wherever. I lived between the two places. Except in high school. I lived with Mom, met Tyler, planted roots. Tyler and I had remained connected through the years. He had become my anchor, my sounding board, my family. Nobody else stayed. Now he was getting married. Where did that leave me? I'd be here in the Bahamas for a week, head back to Oregon for a couple more, then do in Egypt for a photo expose on the Sphinx complex and some new discoveries. No, I didn't stay anywhere long enough for a relationship. I now pronounce you man and wife. You may now kiss your partner, the officiant announced, a wide smile on her face. As they kissed, I looked about the ceremony and wondered, what had I missed? Chapter 7. Following the wedding was cocktail hour, that really lasted 2 hours, for the guests and photos for the wedding. The photographer worked with the Atlantist and knew the best places to take photos. Photos of the entire lineup, groom and groomsman photo, bridal party photos, family photos. Even Dominic was in those. And about 10 million of Tyler and Stephanie. Dominic told me about the brokerage he worked at, a few stocks he was watching, and the vintage Lamborghini he was restoring. The champagne loosened my tongue, and I told him about a photo shoot covering the Trooping the Colour celebration in England last June, even showing him some of the pictures I kept on my phone. "You use your phone?" he asked. "Only to check lighting and setup," I replied. "For the real shots, I shoot with the Fujifilm X-25 and a couple of prime lenses. Easier to haul through airports than some of the bigger systems, and I prefer its color science." "You keep it in your room?" he asked. "No," I replied. "It's in the hotel safe." The reception dinner was scheduled at 4. At 3:45, I texted Daniel. "Running late, they want several shots." Waiting at a table by the cake. Done with the family photos, the photographer shepherded only the wedding party from one postcard backdrop to another. First the Royal Towers, then a palm-lined path overlooking the marina. The final pictures were at Cove Beach, where Trevor nearly lost his shoe in the surf, and Stephanie laughed so hard she snorted. The photographer declared it the best picture of the day, and took 20 more. We entered the reception hall at 4:15, ready for dinner. Daniel was already there, sitting at a table by a 3-tiered cake. He had dressed for the occasion: dark gray suit, silvery silk shirt, no tie. A matching ribbon held his dreadlocks back. His right hand held a champagne flute. His left rested on the table beside his phone. He laughed at something someone had said. The man next to him smiled and replied in a low tone. I couldn't hear what was said, but their conversation was flirty and easy. Daniel offered his smile before sipping his champagne. Totally calm, totally enjoying himself. The man raised his own champagne flute, offering a quiet toast to Daniel. He turned his head slightly, letting the late afternoon light outline his profile. My stomach clenched. The man making the moves on my date was Dominic Gold. As I walked over, Dominic said, "I know a great restaurant not far from here. Dune. The maitre d' owes me a favor." "The Ocean Club? That's out of my price range," Daniel said. "What say we get dinner later? I've met the chef, Jean-Georges Van Gerichten, and the food is superb." Again, Daniel flashed that smile. "I'll have to decline. I already have a date." Dominic placed his hand over Daniel's, accidentally displaying diamond cufflinks. He must not think it's that important, because it's rude to keep a date waiting. "He texted," Daniel replied. "He's running late." Dominic nodded. "I'll be in town tomorrow night as well, if you change your mind." Before either man could answer, I stepped up beside Daniel. "Sorry about the wait," I said. "Photographers can't be rushed." Dominic looked up at me, quickly sliding his hand off Daniel's. "Andre? You're Daniel's date?" "I have that honor." I finally looked at Dominic. "If you'll excuse us, Tyler invited us to join him and Stephanie at the family table." Chapter 9. White-jacketed servers emerged from the kitchen carrying plates of filet mignon and Caribbean lobster tail, each arranged with the sort of artistic precision usually reserved for museum exhibits. Daniel and I sat at the end of the family table, Tyler and Stephanie near the middle, surrounded by parents and grandparents. Clear glass jars filled with pink water were festooned with white lilies and floating pink candles. Over dinner, we spoke about our lives, how Tyler and I first met, about places they would go on their honeymoon. Though we were in the Bahamas, it didn't count. Tyler and Stephanie had agreed on delaying it because of work deadlines. They wanted to go to Costa Rica, but not during the hot season. From a nearby table, Dominic kept looking at us, or more specifically, Daniel. When I glanced his way, he quickly focused on his meal, After the meal, we had a few minutes before the reception. "Take me on a tour," I asked. "Bring your camera." Daniel's smile was contagious. "Let's have some fun." After I retrieved my camera from the safe, we left the music and party behind. We had abandoned our jackets and ties at the reception hall, and were walking through the gardens. Dan posed by a tree, his stance casual and relaxed. I took several pictures. Then we found ourselves at Cove Beach, walking barefoot through the sand. Daniel rolled up the cuffs of his pants and danced through the shallows, his shirt billowing in the wind. I knelt, aimed, and followed him down the beach through the lens as he splashed through the surf. We followed the paths to the marina. Daniel took my camera. I did the model thing and leaned casually against a white yacht and sucked my cheeks in. Daniel snapped more pictures. A bystander took pictures of both of us, pretending to be boyfriends, holding hands and standing close. Daniel had serious eyes and a soft curve to his lips that made me want to kiss him. A text from Tyler said the reception had started. An unexpected disappointment hung inside my chest. I read the text a second time, then slowly slid the phone into my pocket. Tyler and Stephanie were starting something permanent. I never had that. Not with my old family, not with any of my boyfriends. The only permanent thing in my life was my friendship with Tyler. What would it be like to stay in a place long enough to grow roots, have a relationship, fall in love? I took the camera, snapped a few final pictures, and held Daniel's hand. Could I settle down with one person? The idea terrified me. I loved to see the world, meet so many people, see events most people barely understand. Could I give that up? Do I even want to? My life came with a cost that I only now understood. I found myself squeezing Daniel's hand as though letting go would mean losing something important. He squeezed back. Daniel would never understand why that simple gesture meant so much, and there is no way in hell I could explain it. We walked slowly to the reception hall. Tyler saw us enter, grabbed 2 champagne flutes, and walked toward us. He handed us the champagne and said, "Looks like somebody else found a little romance." Both Daniel and I smiled. I took one of the flutes, handed one to Daniel, before replying to Tyler, "You look a lot more relaxed than this morning." Tyler glanced over at Stephanie, then down at my camera. "Let's not talk about that. Did you guys have fun?" Chapter 10. Cutting the 3-tiered cake marked the beginning of the reception. It was an aqua masterpiece with swirling frosting that resembled ocean waves, edible pearls, and frosting seashells. A spun sugar crown graced the top tier. I snapped photos of Tyler smearing frosting across Stephanie's mouth, the tossing of the garter, and the kiss they shared in the middle of their first dance. By then, the flower girl was drowsing in her mother's arms, and Stephanie helped carry her niece upstairs. It had been a very long day for the little girl. Stephanie returned a half-hour later in a dress the same color as the wedding cake. The music changed. Gone was the formal, stately wedding music. Something casual and modern replaced it, a romantic playlist selected by the bride and groom. While Ed Sheehan crooned about love in desperate tones, Daniel gave me a wide grin and said, "Would the handsomest photographer in the room care to dance?" I finished my champagne, set the flute on a passing tray, and replied, "I thought you'd never ask." He took my hand and led me onto the floor. Tyler and Stephanie held the center, but Stephanie waved us over. We danced alongside them. The music shifted to something slow. I asked the question that didn't sound dangerous, but as soon as the words flowed out of me, I realized how dangerous it was. "When you get married, what would you have on top of your cake?" Daniel laughed. Hot Rod and Iron-Hide. Excuse me? 2 Autobots, Daniel replied. Movie version Hot Rod is a Lamborghini. He's young, impulsive, and a hero. Best-looking car of the bunch. I can see the resemblance, I smirked. Daniel smirked back. You know it. So who is Iron-Hide? An old alligator? I asked. Daniel leaned in intimately close and whispered, Movie version is cooler than the classic. I smiled and said, So he turns into an old alligator, but his hide is made of titanium? Tougher, Daniel replied. He's a GMC Topkick C4400, a 4x4 with attitude. He's gruff, seen the world, and packs equipment for every occasion. Just like the man I'm dancing with. You want a truck and an Italian sports car on top of your wedding cake? Too much to ask for a first date, Daniel said, giving me a flirty smile. I looked down at the camera still hanging from my neck and realized my mistake. It had only been a casual flirt, but it struck closer to the truth that I wanted. The man who traveled, who saw the world, who didn't stay long enough to make life permanent. Tyler and Stephanie held each other, talking low, eyes for each other. I'd had that, but never for long. Daniel must have seen my hesitation because he asked, What's your next assignment? I eased back into the dance. Egypt. It wasn't long before I told him about the assignment, about what was expected, about meeting some of the leading Egyptologists, and bringing the Sphinx to digital life. The scientists are using this opportunity to recreate the Sphinx as it existed through the ages, using not only my photos, but the latest ground-penetrating radar to map the structure and everything underneath in a way that wasn't possible before. Daniel's eyes moistened and looked far away. I can't imagine all the people you've met. I want to come. The vulnerability in my soul reached through the walls I'd built about me and spoke truth I hadn't shared with anyone. All the travel means I only get to know people for a few weeks, then it's on to another place. I don't have a family, few real friends, and no place I truly call home. My life is what I take with me. Does that mean, Daniel nodded, you have to start over all the time? I leaned in. Don't get me wrong, I love what I do. But do you feel like you're missing something? He asked. I held it still, locking my eyes on his. Sometimes I wonder if I hopped on the wrong train. What if I had stayed in Oregon, settled down, had a family, did what everyone else did? Daniel looked thoughtful. 2 trains left the station. You chose the one less traveled. Another Transformer metaphor? I asked. Nearby, Tyler laughed at something Stephanie had said. The air smelled of cake, perfume, and cologne. And regret, my own, of doors that I had walked past and now were closed. Sometimes, I replied, I wonder if I made the wrong choice, and now I'm dealing with the consequences. Daniel nodded again, once, twice. Maybe you're looking at it backwards. I stepped back and met his eyes. His eyes held an upward hint. Perhaps you need to explain, I asked. A voice interrupted us. Someone lightly tapped Daniel on the shoulder. I noticed how graceful a dancer you are. Perhaps you could indulge me with a dance. Dominic Gold stood just behind Daniel, a gentle smile touching his face. The train that had been speeding along suddenly switched tracks. Chapter 11. I'm sure Andre won't mind, Dominic said. All I'm asking for is a single dance. Daniel offered a polite smile. I'm sorry, we're on a date. Dominic's smile seemed forced around the edges. I suspect he'd never been refused before. He spun the Yale ring about his fingers, his eyes losing a little of the confident charm they possessed. Tyler and Stephanie whirled over, an aura of jasmine perfume about them. Stephanie, her eyes filled with the magic of the day, laughed. Just say yes, Daniel. Dominic will keep asking until you do. Besides, one dance won't hurt anyone. This is my wedding. Enjoy yourselves. We were trapped. If Daniel agreed, he'd keep the peace but risked hurting me. If he said no, Stephanie would be offended. Besides, Dominic struck me as the kind of man who wouldn't stop until he got his way. Then again, if Daniel said yes, would that even slow Dominic down? What would he want next? He was obviously rich, went to the right schools, had a Lamborghini, a nice house or condo. He could provide roots. I could provide none of those. I had to admit it. Dominic took a different train than I had and arrived at a completely different station. Though it stung, I plastered on a friendly smile. Go ahead, Daniel. I'll get us some drinks. Champagne, okay? Make it a rum runner, Daniel said. I'll wait at the bar. Tyler opened his mouth, then shut it again. The wedding sparkle faded from his eyes. His shoulders were stiff, and when he looked at me, his eyebrows furrowed. For a second, his smile completely vanished. Daniel stiffly talked with Dominic, saying, Weather is warmer than normal, but we are heading into hurricane season when both temperature and weather is random. Dominic smiled as if he won the prize. Maybe because I hadn't settled down, I couldn't understand people like Dominic. He acted like Daniel was nothing more than a one-night stand. That irked me. I slunk to the bar, desperately trying not to look at the dance floor. Chapter 12. I ordered 2 rum runners and was sipping one. My phone was out, displaying the time. How long does one dance take? It's been 5 minutes. Stephanie sat down next to me, a wave of jasmine about her. Hi, she said. What are you doing here? I asked. She dabbed at her eye, careful not to warp her makeup. Tyler's dancing with Jessica, my maid of honor, on my wedding day. I glanced at the dance floor. Tyler danced with the bridesmaid, but his movements were stiff and formal. Though he smiled, his shoulders were tense, his brow lowered whenever he glanced in Stephanie's direction. 5 minutes ago, I said, glancing over at Daniel and Dominic. You were fine. What changed? Stephanie leaned her elbows on the counter and looked down. Do you date much? The ice in the rum runner settled. I looked deep into the drink, thinking about the decisions that had brought me here. Used to, but not recently. Think of it as a casualty of my job. I think the last formal date I went on was in London. I thought Tyler was exaggerating when he said you travel a lot, she said, though her voice held a subdued tone. Take your age and double it, I replied. That's how many countries I've been in at least once. I'm the same age as Tyler. As you. Your point? I asked, then continued. I was working on an expose about the history of the London Underground for National Geographic. There was this guy, kind of my guide, so I didn't get lost. He showed me this old pub, Ye Old Cheshire Cheese. It goes back centuries and was built after the Great Fire of London in 1666. We dated for 2 weeks. Then they sent me to a tech conference in Japan. A year, she mused. Tyler waited a year before he proposed. I've never stayed in one place even close to that long, I replied. She stared at the dance floor, mouth opening a second, then closing, and pushed her hair behind her ear. Penny for your thoughts? I asked. It seemed like she wasn't going to answer, and then she finally said, "A whole year of showing up. I took it for granted. I don't understand." Stephanie shook her head. "It's not important." I changed the subject. "Did Tyler say anything before he switched partners? Maybe it will give us a clue where his head is." She looked out at the dance floor and pursed her lips. "He said it's rude to bet another player's chips or give their toys away." I didn't say anything. Tyler was still looking out for me. Even when I was on the other side of the world, I saluted the rum runner in Tyler's direction. "First real date in a year," Stephanie muttered. "And it's at my wedding." I nodded. "Excuse me." Stephanie left, heading not toward Tyler, but toward where Dominic held Daniel. Daniel laughed, but it was a polite laugh. Dominic said something, tried to hand Daniel his phone. Before Daniel could do anything, Stephanie stepped up to Dominic. Daniel looked around, spotted me. I saluted with my drink. Daniel quickly walked over. We hugged, and then the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. That feeling has served me over the years, like when the photo shoot in front of the Louvre went bad because someone had tried to swipe my camera. Though Stephanie danced with Dominic, his eyes remained fixed on Daniel, relaxing in my arms. Chapter 12. Near the end of the reception, Daniel and I stepped outside and into the golden light of the setting sun. We held hands and walked along the northern beach. The sun glinted off the Atlantis windows, and gulls cried in the distance. A pelican flew over the ocean, the light turning at a deep ochre. The few people around lounged at the beach, its white sands glowing as the sun descended. The ocean stretched to the limitless horizon, a deep turquoise near the shore stretching to a pale gray in the distance. Palm trees swayed in the evening breeze. The bar at Cove Beach lit up. More like a simple beach house with a roof and no walls, it had tables both inside and in the open air. We took a seat under the sky, watching as lights emerged across the cove. A nearby band played reggae on tympanum drums, creating a wild cacophony amidst the beach magic. Some people danced around a bonfire. The waitress brought us rum runners, and we talked. Finally, with a nervous smile, Daniel offered, "Do you want to see the collection?" Perhaps in my younger years I would have jumped. Instead, this whole day had made me introspective, maybe even melancholic. For the first time, I doubted the path I had chosen. Today was the first time my soul admitted that maybe I had missed something. My schedule was set for the next few months. Like it or not, I needed the paycheck. And maybe some deep part of me craved the constant chance to explore, meet new people, discover places I've never been. But was it fair to those around me? Daniel laid his hand on mine. "Or we can just stay here and enjoy the night. The cove has the best sunsets in the world. The sun can turn the ocean into liquid fire." "I'm leaving in a few days." I turned my hand over and interlaced my fingers with his. "It isn't fair for you to get to know me, and then I'm gone." His hand didn't let go. Part of me expected it to. "You said I was looking at life backwards. What did you mean?" I asked. Daniel leaned over and whispered, barely louder than the nearby surf, "You chose the right train. It fits you. We both know that staying in one place would drive you crazy, and it wouldn't be long until you hated life." "What are you saying?" "You never got on the wrong train. You're just traveling on the train alone." The vulnerability in his eyes undid me. The light reflected across their glossy surface, and an earnestness reached out. I'd only known him for a day, yet I caressed his cheek. Our lips met, at first hesitant as we explored each other. Then it warmed as the resistance inside me dissolved. Soft sound crunched underfoot. Daniel sat a little straighter, his eyes flickering behind me. A shadow fell over us. Daniel's mouth shut. "Daniel, I was hoping I would find you." The voice was smooth and cultured. Dominic, shirt open, his dark jacket slung over his shoulder, stood behind us, a martini in hand. Chapter 13. Dominic's gaze flicked from me to Daniel, his mouth opening a moment, then quickly closed. He remained quiet, as if gathering his thoughts. Daniel and I slid apart. Dominic pulled his phone from his pocket, unlocked it, and presented it. "I don't have much time before I leave. Just enough to get to know you. I want your number, and I won't take no for an answer," he said in a flirty tone, minimizing the demand behind the humor, but it was still a demand. Ironically, he echoed my words, but not the way I felt. This was between Daniel and Dominic, but I could be here for Daniel. After a deep breath, Daniel glanced at me. I squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry, Dominic. Your train isn't going in my direction." "I don't understand," he replied. "It's just a few days of fun, and then we go our separate ways." Daniel folded his arms, his chin lifting a fraction. "I want something more than a series of one-nighters." "With him?" Dominic said. "He's nothing more than a wandering photographer. I bet he doesn't even have a degree." His hand raised as if he were using the Yale ring to punctuate a sentence. Both men looked at me. I shrugged. "Bachelor of Science from Oregon State. Loved the gadgets, hated the math, became a photographer instead, and traveled the world." "That's the train I want," Daniel said, taking hold of my arm. "Besides, I like trucks, especially big ones with titanium plating." "That chases after a special Lamborghini," I replied, letting Daniel snuggle into me. "I own a Lamborghini," Dominic quickly responded. With a completely innocent look about his eyes, Daniel said, "But can it stand on top of a cake?" Epilogue. The sun sailed far above, glaring down from the blue heavens with heat that could melt concrete. Cairo, Egypt. We stood under a large white tent blocking the worst of the sun's wrath, the Sphinx looming nearby, its ragged dark sandstone face staring into infinity. "How's the honeymoon?" I asked, my cell phone on speaker. There was a click and a pause before Tyler responded. "Costa Rica is beautiful. The second reception was almost as good as the one at the Bahamas." "Anything happen?" Daniel asked, stepping beside me. "Stephanie's uncle got drunk and made the weirdest toast. He mixed up people and told about a broken water heater, and then he passed out under the gifts table. How are you two doing? Find anything interesting?" I placed my hand on Daniel. "The scientists are creating an updated digital map of all tunnels, fissures, and possible chambers below the surface, and are coordinating with the pictures we've produced. They've even discovered a possible fissure that shows evidence of water." "They think it might be an ancient well," Daniel replied. "How do you like Egypt?" Tyler asked. Daniel smiled. "I finally found the right train." I stepped behind Daniel and hugged him. The truth was simple. I had never climbed aboard the wrong train. The mistake was believing I had to ride it alone. Beyond us, the Sphinx stared east across the desert, keeping its secrets. Daniel leaned back against me and squeezed my hand. For the first time in my life, I looked toward the next horizon and knew I wouldn't be facing it alone. The end. Thank you, my friends, for spending time with me in Bentley. I hoped you enjoyed our trip to the Bahamas. Peace, my friends. I love you all.